I gave up everything for him, but when he made it, he acted like I never existed. They always say behind every successful man is a strong woman. I was that woman until he left me behind like an old lyric he didn't want to sing anymore. We were just kids when we fell in love. Starving artists, broke dreamers, living off ramen noodles and promises. I believed in him more than he believed in himself. While he chased music, I worked double shifts to keep the lights on, to pay rent on our tiny one-bedroom apartment that smelled like cheap cologne and ambition. When I got pregnant, I thought it would change things in a good way. That he'd settle down, stay home a little more, hold me at night instead of his guitar. But dreams don't wait, he said. I should have known the night he missed the birth of our son. Said he had a gig. A big opportunity, babe. I was alone in that hospital room, clutching our newborn, while the crowd clapped for him under blinding stage lights. I told myself it was okay. That it was temporary. That he'd come home. But days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into silence. And when I finally saw him again 3 months later, it was through a scream. A music video. MTV. He was there. Smiling like he'd won the world. A new look. New sound. A girl dancing beside him who wasn't me. I blinked, thinking I imagined it. But no. Her hand was on his chest. His lips brushed her neck. He never came back. Not to me. Not to our son. And yet that wasn't even the worst part. Because years later, when I thought the past was buried, he showed up again. At our doorstep. Smiling. And behind him was my son. Hugging him like he'd never left. My name is Ava. I used to be someone with big dreams too. I wanted to be a writer. I'd fill notebooks with short stories and poems when I was a teenager, scribbling under my blanket with a flashlight at midnight. I used to imagine seeing my name on the spine of a novel, maybe even sitting across from Oprah, laughing and talking about the book that changed people's lives. But that dream got quieter the day I met him, Jace Rivers. He walked into the campus cafe with that messy hair and a guitar slung over his shoulder like it was a part of his body. I was wiping down tables, juggling a part-time job and a full-time course load. He asked for a black coffee. No sugar. No milk. Just like his music raw, bitter, real. He had this way of talking that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. He listened with his eyes. And when he sang, God, it was like his voice carried all the pain and beauty in the world at once. We started dating 3 weeks later. He'd write songs, and I'd sit on the floor beside him, editing my short stories while he strummed chords. Sometimes we wouldn't even talk. We didn't have to. The silence between us felt like music too. We moved in together the summer after sophomore year. A cramped studio apartment with peeling paint and a bathroom door that didn't lock, but it was ours. We were broke, but we were happy. I used to leave sticky notes on his guitar case. You're gonna make it someday. He kept them all. Said they were his good luck charms. But life didn't wait. By 23, I was pregnant. A surprise, but not a regret. Never a regret. Jace was stunned at first. Said all the right things held me while I cried, kissed my belly every morning. But I could see it in his eyes. Fear. Not of fatherhood, but of losing his freedom. Of becoming ordinary. When I asked if he'd get a steady job, just for a while, he flinched. Ava, music is my only shot. I'm not like other guys. I can't sit in the cubicle and die slowly every day. I nodded, said I understood. So I picked up more shifts at the bookstore and gave up my writing. My fingers still itched for the keyboard sometimes, but I had diapers to buy. Formula. Rent. I told myself Jace would come through. That once he made it, it would all be worth it. He didn't even make it to the hospital the day our son Noah was born. And that's when the cracks turned into canyons. He started traveling more open mics in other cities, late-night studio sessions. I barely recognized the man who used to whisper lyrics into my hair at 3 a.m. Then came the record deal. He didn't even tell me. I found out through a tagged photo on Instagram. Him. Smiling with a producer. Champagne in one hand. A woman hanging off his arm. And just like that, we became his past. Me, a shadow. Noah, a ghost of a responsibility he didn't want. But I kept going. Because that's what mothers do. We carry the weight of dreams we didn't get to chase while making sure our children never feel the cracks. It had been 2 years since Jace left. 2 years of waking up to the same empty bed beside me, no matter how many times I tried to imagine him back hugging me tight, telling me he was sorry, that he'd come home for good. But he never did. Noah was almost 3 now. I'd done everything I could to make sure he knew about his dad. I kept the pictures, the stories, the songs he'd written for me. I told him about the man who used to hold us both in his arms and dream big. Even when Jace didn't call, I made sure Noah knew who he was. But sometimes, it felt like I was telling stories of a stranger. I'd moved on in my own way. Not in the way I imagined, with a perfect life and perfect love, but in a quieter way. I found a job at a local publishing company and started writing again, though it never seemed like enough. I lived for the small joys, Noah's giggles, my morning coffee, the new book I'd start reading that would help me forget, even for an hour, that I wasn't living the life I'd once dreamed of. But then, one evening, everything came crashing back. It was a Thursday, one of those nights where the air was just cold enough to make you pull your sweater tighter around your shoulders. I was making dinner when I heard the familiar ping of my phone from across the room. I picked it up. It was a message from a number I didn't recognize. "Come to the show tonight. I know you're still watching from afar. It's time to talk." My heart stopped. I thought maybe it was a joke. But as the seconds passed, the words felt heavier. I felt my palms start to sweat. I almost didn't go. I thought about ignoring it, deleting the message, pretending it never happened. But curiosity, pain, and anger collided, and before I knew it, I was standing in front of the venue. It was a small, dimly lit bar on the edge of town, the kind of place where broken dreams went to die. I hadn't seen Jace perform in years, not since the music video, not since everything changed. I pushed open the door, the sound of a guitar riff drifting out, mingling with the buzz of conversation. My breath caught in my throat. Jace was on stage. The crowd was raucous, drunk off their own excitement, the lights flashing in rhythm with the music. I stood frozen, watching him. He looked the same handsome, wild-eyed, like he was born to be up there. But there was something different about him, now something I couldn't quite put my finger on. As he sang, his gaze swept over the crowd. And then it landed on me. For a split second, I saw that familiar spark, the one I had missed for so long. He recognized me. There was a flicker of emotion in his eyes, almost like he'd been waiting for this moment. And yet, in that same second, his face twisted into something I didn't expect. A mask, cold and distant, like I was just another stranger in the room. I wanted to leave, but my feet stayed rooted to the floor. Then the song ended. He smiled, wiping sweat from his forehead, but as the crowd cheered, I saw something I hadn't prepared for. A woman walked up to Hima, woman with strikingly red lips, laughing and twirling around him as she clung to his side. She kissed his cheek. I froze. I thought I was imagining it. But no, it wasn't a mistake. She didn't just kiss his cheek. She whispered something in his ear, and he laughed in response, his hand sliding down her back, just a little too familiarly. Something twisted inside me like the final stitch in a wound I didn't even know was still open. The pain, the betrayal, the years of unanswered questions all rushed back in an overwhelming wave. I felt like I was suffocating. The room started to spin, but I couldn't tear my eyes away. Was this why he hadn't called? Had he found someone else? Someone better than me? Was this why Noah had never been enough to bring him back? And then, just when I thought I'd burst from the weight of it all, Jace's eyes met mine again. This time, they weren't full of longing or regret. They were indifferent. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. But I couldn't look away either. The night felt endless. I stayed in that bar for what felt like hours, watching Jace and that woman laugh, whisper, and touch like it was all so casual. So easy. And every time their eyes met, I swore I felt the weight of the past crash over me. It wasn't just betrayal. It wasn't just the fact that he'd moved on. leaving me behind with nothing but memories and a son to raise. No, what hurt more was the look in his eyes, the way he acted like I wasn't even worth acknowledging. Like everything we had, everything I had sacrificed didn't matter anymore. But I couldn't leave. I told myself I should go. To grab my coat, walk out the door, and never look back. I told myself I was strong enough to leave that life behind for good. But I wasn't. I stood there, frozen in place, staring at him as if I was waiting for some kind of sign, a glance, a smile, anything to tell me it was all just a mistake. Maybe I was overthinking it. That the woman was just a friend. That the kiss on the cheek meant nothing. That he still cared. I wanted to believe that. But every inch of my body screamed at me that it wasn't true. I watched him perform the rest of his set, his eyes never straying from that woman. Every word he sang felt like a reminder of how far he'd gone, how far I'd been left behind. The same psalms that had once been our connection now felt like a cruel joke. I wanted to scream, to march up to him, to grab him by the shoulders and shake the truth out of him. I wanted to demand answers, to know why he had done this to me, to us, why he had disappeared without a trace, why he had abandoned our son for a life of fame and women and endless applause. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I stood there, seething with frustration, choking on the reality I'd been avoiding for so long. I kept asking myself, what's wrong with me? Was I not enough? Was I just a stepping stone on his way to success? Had I become so insignificant that he didn't even have the decency to call once in a while? To check in, to ask about Noah? Why couldn't he love me the way he loved music? I glanced out at my phone, hoping for anything from Noah. Maybe he was asleep already. Maybe he was thinking about me, even though it seemed like Jace had forgotten all about us. But no. The screen was dark. No messages, no calls. I closed my eyes, feeling a pit form in my stomach. It wasn't just the absence of Jace that hurt. It was the weight of everything he hadn't done. The empty promises, the dreams we were supposed to share, the life we were supposed to build together. And yet, all I had now were echoes of his voice, of his touch, of the man who had once promised me forever. Suddenly, I couldn't breathe. I could feel myself unraveling, and I hated it. Why do I still care? I asked myself. He didn't care. He was living his life, surrounded by people who adored him, while I was here, clinging to memories of a man who was nothing but a ghost to me now. But as much as I hated the thought, a deeper fear began to creep in the fear that I hadn't been forgotten. That I was just not enough. Not good enough to bring him back. Not good enough to keep his attention. And then, as if the universe was mocking me, I saw him again. Jace turned his head, and our eyes locked for what felt like an eternity. His face was unreadable, distant. His smile was forced. But there it was. That flicker of recognition. He saw me. For a moment, I thought I would implode. My mind raced, but the words I needed to say, the words that had been waiting to escape for years, stuck in my throat. I wanted to confront him. To walk up to him and demand answers. To scream at him for what he did to me, to our son, to the life we once shared. But I couldn't. I couldn't. Something in me stopped me from confronting him, from asking the questions I knew would break me even further. What if he doesn't care? What if he never cared? Instead, I turned and walked away. I didn't even know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay in that place anymore, surrounded by his music, his fans, and that woman who clearly had everything I'd once dreamed of. I stepped outside into the cold night air, gasping for breath like I hadn't been breathing properly for years. And just as I was about to lose myself in the dark, I felt my phone buzz in my pocket. It was a text. From him. The text message from Jace buzzed in my hand. My heart skipped a beat, and for a moment, I stood there frozen, staring at the screen like I'd just been handed a life raft I wasn't sure I wanted. Meet me tomorrow. We need to talk. I've been an idiot. I've missed you. The words felt like a punch in the gut. Missed you? After everything? After years of silence, of letting me raise our son alone while he was out there chasing fame, and who knows what else. After watching him with another woman in front of my face tonight, how was it possible for him to act like nothing had changed? I could feel the heat rising in my chest. I should have deleted the message. Ignored it like I'd done so many times before. He didn't deserve my time. He didn't deserve a second chance. But something inside me couldn't do it. Something pulled me in, a mix of anger and longing I couldn't quite control. A part of me wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, he had missed me. Maybe he regretted leaving. Maybe he was ready to make things right. But that was the illusion, the fantasy. The truth? The truth was, I didn't know who he was anymore. The next day, I showed up at the cafe where we'd agreed to meet. It was a quiet place, tucked away in the corner of town, a place that used to be special to us. I thought about how we used to sit here for hours, talking about everything and nothing, while he scribbled lyrics on napkins and I talked about my latest story ideas. I sat at the same table we'd shared years ago, feeling the ghosts of our past settling into the empty chairs across from me. My hands were trembling. I hadn't seen him face to face in so long, hadn't even spoken to him in months. And yet, when the door swung open, my heart did that ridiculous thing it always did. It skipped. He walked in, looking like he had just stepped off a magazine cover. His hair was messier than ever, and his clothes screamed rockstar. But it wasn't just his appearance that made my chest tighten, it was the way he looked at me. That familiar spark was there again. His eyes softened for a brief second before he masked it with a confident smile. But I saw it. I saw the regret. I saw the guilt. "Ava," he said softly, sitting across from me. His voice was low, almost nervous. "I didn't think you'd come." "You asked me to," I replied, keeping my tone cool, trying to hold back the flood of emotions that threatened to spill over. "You said you wanted to talk, and that's when everything changed." Jace looked at me like he was about to say something, but his phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at it, quickly swiping the screen and muttering something under his breath. A moment later, the phone rang. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice distant. "I need to take this. Just a minute." I nodded, pretending it didn't bother me. But as he picked up the call, I felt a sharp pang of betrayal all over again. I couldn't help myself. I leaned forward, just a little, to catch the conversation. At first, I couldn't hear much, just his voice, muffled as he stepped away from the table. But then I heard her. Her laughter. The same woman from last night. "Babe, I miss you too," Jace said, his voice dripping with a warmth that made my stomach turn. "I'm just wrapping up here. We'll be together soon, okay?" I felt my world shatter at that moment. Not just because he was talking to her, but because of the tone in his voice. The way he said babe. The way he sounded so familiar. So comfortable. Like they'd been doing this for longer than I could have imagined. I wasn't just some distant memory. I wasn't someone he had missed. I was the past. The past he was trying to erase. I sat there in stunned silence, feeling as though I was slowly suffocating. Every breath felt heavy, every heartbeat painful. I tried to keep it together. I had to. But my hands were shaking, my pulse racing, my head spinning. The man who had once promised me forever, who had once loved me, was now living a life I couldn't even recognize. And suddenly, all the bitterness I'd kept buried deep inside came rushing to the surface. The anger. The betrayal. The years of loneliness. The fact that I had raised our son alone while he moved on so easily. When he hung up, he looked at me with a forced smile, like everything was normal. "I'm sorry about that," he said, taking a deep breath. "I just wanted to tell you something important. I've been thinking a lot about us, about Noah, about what we could have been, but I wasn't listening anymore. My mind was screaming, how could you? How could you come here, make me believe there was a chance for us, when you already had someone else?" Before I could stop myself, the words flew out of my mouth, sharp and cold. "So, what is it?" "You've moved on. You've got someone else, haven't you? Tell me the truth, Jace. Stop lying to me." For the first time since I saw him tonight, he didn't respond with a quick rebuttal. Instead, He just stared at me, his eyes wide, with something I couldn't quite place. And in that moment I realized I wasn't angry because he moved on. I was angry because he was pretending he hadn't. His eyes flickered as I hit him with the truth. It was like the weight of my words crashed into him, knocking the breath out of him. I didn't know what I expected, but it wasn't the guilt that flashed across his face. Jace didn't immediately answer. He just stared at me like I was a stranger, like he didn't recognize the woman sitting across from him, the one he once promised everything to. The woman who had kept his memory alive in her heart for so long, who had forgiven him over and over again, even when he didn't deserve it. "Is that what you think?" he asked quietly, almost as if I had accused him of something unthinkable. He ran a hand through his hair, then exhaled like he was deflating. "What do you think?" I fired back, my voice trembling with the weight of everything I had kept buried for so long. "You've been gone for years, Jace. You left me here, raising our son by myself. I've kept everything going for him, for us, while you're out there, living this perfect life, moving on with her, pretending like I don't exist." His face hardened, and for a split second, I thought I saw anger flash in his eyes. But then he deflated again, looking defeated. "Ava," he began, his voice shaking with frustration. "It's not like that. It's not what you think." I shook my head, refusing to let him lie to me again. The truth was too glaring, too painful to deny any longer. "Don't you dare tell me it's not what I think," I said, my voice a mixture of anger and hurt. "I watched you last night, Jace. I saw you with her. You don't just kiss someone like that if they're not important to you. You don't just hold someone like that if you don't feel something." For a moment, he didn't respond. His lips parted, like he was about to say something, but no words came out. I could see the struggle on his face, the guilt, the shame. "I never meant to hurt you," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "I never meant to leave you the way I did. I thought about you every single day, Ava. Every single day, I regretted walking away. I did miss you. I missed everything about us. But then, why? Why?" I asked, the tears threatening to spill. "Why did you go? Why didn't you come back for us? For Noah? You think a text message and some empty words are going to fix everything?" I was lost. Ava. I was chasing something I thought was more important than anything else. But I wasn't happy. I wasn't fulfilled. And now, I realize, and he trailed off, glancing at the floor, the weight of his words sinking in. "You realize what?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "That you've destroyed everything we had? That you've left me to pick up the pieces alone?" His eyes flickered to mine, and in that moment, I saw something raw, something vulnerable that made my chest tighten. I've been living with that guilt every single day. Every single day, Ava, I've wanted to come back. I wanted to fix it, but I didn't know how. I swallowed hard, trying to hold it together. My hands were shaking, my heart pounding in my chest. The floodgates were open now, the emotions that had been buried for so long coming to the surface. "You don't get to say that now," I said, my voice breaking. "You don't get to waltz in here and act like nothing's changed. You don't get to come in and pretend you can just pick up where we left off. You left me in the darkest time of my life. You left us in the dark. I didn't mean for it to happen like this." His voice cracked, his shoulders slumping as if he couldn't hold himself up anymore. I stood up from the table, shaking my head in disbelief. "I don't even know who you are anymore, Jace. The man I married, the man I loved, he's gone, and I don't know if I can even find him in you anymore." The words were like a punch to my own gut. But it was the truth. I didn't recognize him. I didn't know who he was. For a long, painful moment, the air between us was thick with everything we hadn't said. Everything we hadn't addressed in years. And then, when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, he said something that made my heart shatter. "I don't want to lose you, Ava. I don't want to lose Noah. But I don't know how to come back from this. I don't know if I can fix what's broken." The weight of his words hit me harder than anything else. And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't been ready to accept before. Maybe he wasn't the one who had walked away. Maybe I had to let him go. I stood there, the weight of his words pressing down on me like a physical burden. He didn't know how to fix it, he said. He didn't know how to come back. And in that moment, I realized something that had been gnawing at me for so long, something I hadn't been willing to admit. I didn't need him to fix anything. I didn't need him to come back and try to piece together the broken fragments of our life. What I needed, what I had always needed, was to heal on my own. To find my strength without him. To find myself again. And I realized, with painful clarity, that I had been holding on to a version of him that no longer existed. That version had died the moment he chose his dream over us. The man who had promised me forever had left a long time ago. And so, for the first time in years, I made a decision that shook me to my core. I stepped back, taking a deep breath as I looked down at him. His eyes were filled with regret. His shoulders slumped as if he had already resigned himself to the fact that I was slipping away. "I can't do this anymore, Jace," I said, my voice steady, though my heart felt like it was breaking. "I can't keep living in the past, waiting for someone who isn't coming back." The words hung in the air between us, heavy and final. I didn't want to say anything to them. I didn't want to be the one to walk away. But I knew it was the only way. He opened his mouth to speak, but I held up my hand, stopping him. "No," I whispered, feeling the tears burn at the corners of my eyes. "I don't want to hear it. I can't hear you tell me you're sorry, that you'll change, that you'll come back, because I know you won't. You're already gone. You've been gone for a long time." He was silent for a moment, just staring at me like he was trying to understand what I was saying. And then, with a heavy sigh, he nodded. His face was pale, the pain in his eyes visible. He looked like a man who had already lost everything, and maybe he had. "I'm sorry, Ava," he whispered, the words thick with regret. "I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'll always love you. I'll always love Noah." It was like a knife in my chest. But I knew what I had to do. I didn't need his love anymore, not if it came with so many strings attached. "I'll never forget you," I said softly, my voice steady despite the flood of emotions threatening to drown me. "But I can't keep holding on. I have to let go, for me, for Noah." I turned and walked out of the cafe without looking back. My chest ached with every step, but with each one, I felt something loosening inside me, a tight knot I had carried for years, finally starting to unravel. The world outside was bright, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like I could breathe again. I wasn't free of the pain, but I was free of the weight of him. Free of the past I had tried so desperately to keep alive. The next few weeks were a blur. I focused on Noah, on my own healing, and on rebuilding the life I had nearly forgotten I could have without him. Slowly, the scar tissue began to form over the wound Jace had left behind. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. And with every new day, I realized something. I didn't need Jace to be whole. I had been whole all along. I started taking care of myself in ways I had neglected for years. I went to therapy. I reconnected with friends. I found my passion for writing again. Slowly, piece by piece, I put myself back together. And through it all, Noah, sweet, resilient Noah, was my reason for everything. He was the reminder that I wasn't broken. That I could survive this. That I could be the mother he needed, the woman I had lost in the chaos of loving someone who had never fully loved me back. One evening, as the sun began to set, I sat on the porch with Noah in my lap. He was older now, smarter, and had a heart full of questions. We watched the sky turn shades of purple and orange as the stars began to appear one by one. "Mom?" he asked, his voice quiet. "Do you think Dad will come back?" I paused, the question taking me by surprise. But as I looked down at his innocent face, I realized that Noah didn't need Jace to be whole either. He had me. And he always would. "I don't know, baby," I said softly, brushing his hair out of his eyes. "Though what I do know is that we're okay. We've always been okay." Noah smiled, his eyes lighting up. "Yeah, we are." I smiled back, my heart swelling with love. At that moment, I knew I had made the right choice. Because no matter what Jace did or didn't do, no matter how much he had hurt me or how much he had tried to fix things, it didn't matter. I had my son. and I had myself. And that was enough. And just like that, everything I knew about love and trust was gone. But somehow, I had found something even stronger. The end, or maybe just the beginning.